counter from saying, well, now that you've labelled it a legal strike, what's going to happen to the bus drivers?
Well, obviously, the police will need to carry out the investigations, and I think we'll let the investigations run its course. I think the operational details about how it would unfold, I think we'll leave it as it is. But what is quite clear is that there are certain rules and regulations in place, and we'll follow the due process in accordance with the law.
Could they potentially be sacked, sent back?
There'll be a range of actions that will be taken, but I think let us provide the space for the police to carry out the investigation, and the due process will unfold in the course of the next few days and weeks, and we'll take the necessary actions as prescribed by the law.
Why the decision to finally call it a strike, albeit illegal?
Well, I think it's an important question. There are a few considerations that we took in as we considered the issue. Firstly, I think we need to ascertain the facts and the circumstances. We also need to ascertain the rules and regulations as provided under the law, and that's important. The labeling of an industrial action such as this is not trivial, because by labeling it as a strike or not a strike would then also open up a series of actions that will follow thereafter. So it's important for us to do due diligence, to investigate, and to make sure that we are quite clear what exactly happened. Secondly, as with every action, as you pronounce it a strike or illegal strike as the case may be, there will be a series of potential responses. And I think it would be prudent for us to also ascertain what those reactions might be and to be prepared for them as well. So I think in this light, I think we were quite careful. We were quite aware that it's important to investigate and make sure that we find the correct way of judging this particular incident. And we felt that it's also timely and important for us to be quite decisive, to come out and to explain quite clearly to the public what it is and what it is not.
One of the workers' complaint was in terms of standard agreement, which differential between bus captains from different countries. What does MOF have to say about that?
Well, I mean, there are various grievances raised by the drivers. I think what is quite clear from MOF's perspective is that we expect all employers to treat their workers fairly, in accordance to their abilities, in accordance with their experience, competencies. The space is provided to all employers to decide how best to structure their wage structures, their remuneration packages, and so on. What we are quite definitive is this. There are rules and regulations that are in place that employers are expected to follow, and we expect employers to follow that. But we also recognize that employers, as good employers, also need to manage their staff well, in terms of engagement, in terms of looking at the terms and conditions, which may not be prescribed by law. And so this is something that we believe SMRT, as with all companies, would have to review on a regular basis. And in this particular case, SMRT would need to look at the grievances raised and address them accordingly. We take note of the issues raised. We will look into it. But at this stage, it's probably premature for us and not prudent for us to make any definitive statement as of now. But it's something that we'll look at. But the company would also have to look at the internal procedures, processes, as well as the terms and conditions.
What happened if these actions were prolonged? What are the contingency plans on the industry side?
Yes, okay. I think it's a very valid question, and obviously one that commuters are concerned about. I should emphasize again that all bus services continue to run, and all commuters can still take the usual services. And what we have uncovered is that 90% of the services could be maintained at normal levels. So about 10% yesterday were affected in terms of the frequency. So some of the commuters might have experienced waiting times for up to 20 minutes, for example. But this was not across the board. It was specific to some services at its specific locations. Right? Now, by today, as more drivers return to work, actually the service levels were restored to about 95% of normal levels. Now, what we intend to do by way of contingency planning really is to mobilize resources and have them on standby. What has been very encouraging is that in our discussions with SBS Transit, which is the other public transport operator, they have been very forthcoming. They have agreed to help, to loan some drivers to help SPS, to help SMRT fill the gaps if this becomes necessary. As to how much of these resources we have to mobilize really depends on the scale and the scope of actions that we decide to take. And so the way to look at it is that we will aim to establish the channels where resources can be deployed quickly. We will aim to set up a proper process by which we can help these drivers become familiarized with the routes in quick time. So all of this work is ongoing.
When do you expect bus service to go back 100% of normal?
As soon as this dispute is resolved.
Benita from Channel News Asia. Now, while we understand the established channels for workers to air their grievances, how can the government ensure that this episode doesn't happen again?
Well, obviously, I mean, we take a very serious view of this incident. We would obviously have to investigate the facts and circumstances. There will clearly be lessons to be learned across the board. I think that's something that we will pay attention to. The company would have to do its part. We will also review the existing processes. But what is quite clear is that we need to deal quite decisively with the situation at hand. And I think the message should be quite definitive. There are avenues. There are always avenues of recourse. Employees who are disgruntled, unhappy, would have to flag up through internal processes. There will also be other avenues external. And that's important. And those processes need to unfold. But taking law into your own hand is something that's not acceptable under any circumstances, certainly especially when it involves essential services. So what is quite clear to us is that there will be things that I think various parties would have to reflect on. So, but this is something that I think at this stage would probably be premature at this stage to make any definitive sort of lessons learned statement at this stage. But it's something that we need to pay attention to.
If I could just add briefly, in fact, there is a Migrant Workers Forum, which has established platforms and channels, for workers to provide, feedback and also to register their grievances. So these channels are well known, and a lot of effort has been made by the MWF to outreach at dormitories, at locations where there are many foreign workers. And what we hope to see is that the workers use these established channels and raise their issues in a proper manner. I think one of the hallmarks of Singapore is that we have a high degree of industrial harmony. And this is something that we treasure as part of our business environment. And so employers must do their part, but at the same time, employees must also play their part.
There's one more question, if any. Miana.
I understand a lot of distinctions between instigators and people who actually participate in the strike. Have any certain instigators been identified in this case?
Well, as explained, I think we'll let the police carry out the investigations. There's a due process that will unfold. I think we'll let the process run its course. And I think at appropriate junctures, I think updates will be provided by the relevant authorities. Let that unfold. I think where there will be updates, we'll provide it. Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe you can take one from Christopher.
Okay, sure.
In your investigation so far, do you think SMRT never gets on the job?
Like I said, I think we continue to investigate. Obviously, as with all things, there will be lessons to be learned across the board. It would be inappropriate at this stage, I think, for us to make any definitive proclamation either way on the matter. But what is quite clear is that there are grievances we'll have to look into it. But what is quite definitive and what is quite unacceptable would be for workers, employees to take the law into their own hands, which in this instance was what happened. And this is illegal, and we will let the law unfold, and we'll take the necessary actions. Okay, thank you very much.